Hi, today we're going to cook Boston butt. That's my favorite roast on the hog to use for pulled pork. You can use the picnic shoulder or the shanks, and there's other cuts of meat on the hog you can use to make a pulled pork sandwich. But Boston butt by far is my favorite. It's one of the cheapest cuts on the hog. It always comes out really good. It's a very simple cut to barbecue. It's a great starter cut. I like to buy the bone-in Boston butt, and they're very inexpensive, like I said. You'll see a lot of similarities in this cook between this and the brisket. They have the same internal temperature we're trying to reach, have the same amount of connective tissue and fat inside of it, intermuscular fat. So there's a lot of similarity in those two cuts. You can cook them side by side, and they end up usually cooking in about the same time frame also. So let's get started here on the video. I bought this Boston butt at Walmart. You can see it says pork shoulder, butt, roast, bone in. They're called different things, like a lot of meat cuts are. Basically, it's this big, it looks like a rectangular prison. It's like a stretched out cube. They always look the same. I like to buy them with the bone in. There's the bone on the side there. Only because of the fact that when they take the bone out, it opens up the meat and you get various thicknesses as they butterfly it. Do you see this cut on the end here, or this muscle rather, with the striations that run up and down? That's referred to as the money muscle when you talk to competitors. It is the multifidus dorsi. It's a lot like the longissimus dorsi or the back strap, but it sits underneath it. It sits in the chuck roast of a cow, and it also sits in the shoulder roast or the Boston butt of a hog. It is very, very good. So I want to call attention to that. It's right there on the edge. You can see it. It's kind of a tubular muscle that sits there, and we're going to pay attention to where that is during the cook so that we can cut it up separately later. Everything else with the Boston butt is pretty much ready to go. You can see I'm removing a few small flag pieces of meat and hanging out pieces of fat and things like that that are just going to burn up. There's not much else to do to prep a Boston butt for cooking. They come all ready to go usually. I always have a fat side, and then this is the meat side. And I'm just going to trim a few things off here, and that's really about it. I'm going to inject this one today. Butcher Barbecue makes, yet again, a great injection. Their pork injection is what we'll be using today. You don't have to do this, but I would say it makes a 10% difference. And if you use a lot of 10% differences over time, they all add up to a pretty great product. So we're going to inject it today. The reason I like Butcher Barbecue's injection so much is because it is very soluble. You can stir it up like this, and it melts into the water immediately with no solids. The flavor is excellent. It's not too complex. It doesn't come out and stand out too much. It's inexpensive. It doesn't stain the meat. He does a great job. And just like a brisket, put your hand over the hole, and it won't squirt all over your kitchen cabinets as you inject it. And then just inject the whole piece. This is a stainless steel injector I bought, but I think I bought it at Walmart. It was like $8 or $9. I don't spend too much money on some of these smaller tools. Knives and smokers, that's where I spend a lot of money. I'm going to use this Payne County Bird. It's my own seasoning blend that I'm showcasing on this today. But any pork or poultry seasoning will work great on pork or poultry. I think they have the same types of fatty acids in the fats, and so that's why seasoning blends often go back and forth. So it's all dry rubbed and it's injected, so I'm going to put this in the fridge overnight and let it dry brine and wet brine in that mixture. I like to prep these large cuts, especially the night before, so in the morning I'm all ready to go. You could do this right before the smoke if you wanted to. And since it's only one shoulder roast that we're cooking, I'm going to throw some sausages on too. We're going to cook some hot links and some Polish sausage links. Very simple to do. They're a pre-cooked product, but again, just like bologna, Braunschweiger, some of the other things I've showed you, when you put them in the smoker, it really kicks them up a notch and makes them just really taste good. I like to score sausage products if they have any sort of casing. So I put my finger down to use as a guide on the tip of the knife, and then just score them in whatever pattern you feel is appropriate. I'm just doing the hot links lengthwise, and I did a crosshatch on those Polish sausages. Cooking in a small Oklahoma Joe's offset. This is an old Oklahoma Joe's. You can see the steel is 1/4 inch thick there. Going to start my charcoal chimney with some oil, some vegetable cooking oil, bought some paper towels, and I'm preheating a few pieces of hardwood there. The good thing about using charcoal is you have your fire going in about 30 minutes instead of an hour. And I always clean my grates. I'm using a nylon bristle brush here instead of a metal bristle brush. Those can cause some serious problems in your stomach. And then I am polishing the grates off after spraying them with some vegetable oil or pan release. There we are, about 30 or 45 minutes in, and you can see it's rip-roaring hot. Those pieces of oak and pecan are already caught all the way, and so we'll dump this in there. This is about how much? About almost full charcoal chimney full of charcoal is what it takes to get my Oklahoma Joe's offset up to about 250 degrees. Plus the wood, of course. I'm just starting this fire with charcoal today. We're going to use wood for the remainder of the day when we're cooking. And there we go. Now we just have to wait for the temperature to come up. I like to anyway. It kind of disinfects the entire smoker in my opinion. You don't have to. And then when we hit 250, it's time to load our products up. I'm going to put the money muscle towards the left side, or the away from the fire in this case, to protect it. And I'm going to put it at the back, and the sausage is up here at the front where we can get to them in about an hour and a half. They don't take very long to get a good smoky flavor. And here we are. You can see they've darkened. The skin is tightened up on them, but they're not bent over or warped or seized anywhere because we cut relief cuts in them. There's the hot links and the Polish sausage. All done. Of course, I wasn't spraying that shoulder yet because it was only been an hour and a half. Now it's been about 2.5 hours, and you can see that crust is set. I'm dragging my fingernail along the back of that, and none of it is coming off. That means the bark has set up, and when I spray it down to keep the parts from drying out and burning, it won't wash our seasoning off and that bark that we're working so hard for. Fast forward, we're at 5.5, 6 hours now. It's got the color I want. Everything's getting really soft. You can see those juices start to be exuded when you push on it. It is ready for a braise. I'll bring it inside, and we'll double wrap this roast in heavy-duty aluminum foil, just like we do briskets and things like that. And we will use a probe thermometer with its. In this case, mine has a little bit of a remote wire one, so I can plug it in there and I can see my temperature from the outside. These are great thermometers. We're at about 144, 145 degrees. That's usually about where it is when I take them off. And we'll stick it back in the same foil pan we moved it around in and place it in the oven. I use a 265-degree oven. All this is on the cheat sheets that I provide and those tables on bigrockfoods.com under resources and charts. So there we go, 265 degrees. We just wait for that thermometer to say 205. We don't have to move it or touch it. I think it took about 3, maybe 3.5 more hours to get to that temperature. I'm not using a convection oven in this case. I like to do it really slowly. And then I like to take a probe of some sort and just make sure. Now and then you'll get one that's still tough. This one was soft as warm butter, and that's exactly what you're looking for when you push a probe or a bamboo skewer or a toothpick or something like that into there to see how soft it actually is. All right, we've rested this for a couple hours. The bone always slips right out whenever you cooked it correctly. And then what I like to do is take the whole roast and put it back in the pan with all the juices and brines and things like that that it's sitting in down in the bottom. That way I can dip the chunks of pork as I pull them down into that to further flavor them. Only the outside of this roast is actually flavored. There's some salt that would have penetrated and the injection, of course, in the middle, but the smoke flavor is only in the outside, but it's also in all those juices. I'm going to cut this money muscle off down here on the end. Remember which side that was, and you'll get to know what these look like. And they're very delicate, a very different type of muscle that's in the rest of that shoulder. So I like to protect it and slice it up and eat it as a separate meal. You can see that tube of money muscle, the multifidus dorsi. And we'll just keep that separate. And then I just begin pulling off pieces of the pork shoulder about the size of my thumb. I don't like a really finely shredded product. You see some pulled pork, though, it's just so minced that you can use an ice cream scoop to serve it. I don't like that. I prefer to pull off pieces about the size of my thumb. And I like to, just like that size, I like to arrange them vertically in the pan with the bark side up. This is how I do it every time. If I'm catering or if I'm cooking for myself or my family, it doesn't matter. I always do it exactly the same way. I like to arrange them vertically because we're going to post-season this with some salted product, and I'm going to use the same rub we used and some barbecue sauce just a little bit later. And if you arrange them vertically, it will flow down through all that, and it won't shingle. So it's pretty easy. It all, of course, comes apart very easily, and I'm dipping each of those pieces in that juice as we go, and you can see that pulled pork is just phenomenal looking. You wouldn't believe how good this is. If you've never made this at home, you've only had pulled pork in a restaurant, try this. And I'm going to post-season with the same poultry seasoning, and I'm going to use a little sweet barbecue sauce also. This is the point in time where you could use a vinegar-based sauce if you liked also, which I love. But today I'm going to show you how we do it Kansas City style, pulled pork. So the post-seasoning to me is important because a lot of those herbs and spices in your seasoning mixture, your rub, will have burnt up, and a lot of those subtleties will be lost. So I like to put some raw seasoning on at the end. And then just a little bit of barbecue sauce. This has a lot of sugar in it. I prefer to use a sweet sauce when you're doing this if you're going to cook a Kansas City style, which is what I call this type of pulled pork. And we're done. That is ready to slap on a heavily toasted bun with some coleslaw or however you like it and eat it up. And there's those sausages over there on the side. If you cook this in your backyard like I've shown you and use some of the things like we've talked about in other videos, you will have pulled pork like you've never had before, especially if you've only had it in a restaurant. You know, when you eat it at a restaurant, it's been sitting in a steam pan for a while. They have to do that. They have to keep it at a safe, warm temperature, and there's low likelihood that that just came off the smoker and is fresh and ready to eat, which pork is just always best right off the smoker or the grill or out of the oven. It's not as good the next day like a brisket or something like that. Brisket can handle that. All kinds of foods can, but in my opinion, pulled pork, ribs, even chicken need to be eaten as fresh as possible if you want the best experience. So in a restaurant, if you've tried pulled pork 3 or 4 or 5 times in your life and you think, man, it's kind of bland, or, you know, like I said earlier, sometimes it's so shredded and so minced, it looks like they could serve it with an ice cream scoop. I don't like that. This is a whole different experience. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you try cooking Boston butt on your smoker. It is absolutely incredible. This same technique can be employed on any smoker, just as always. So thank you for watching.